Hey gamers! Welcome to another episode of Bonus XP. It's me and Patrick back at you, and today we're talking about one of the last games I platinumed. We're talking about Dragon Quest XI.
Literally one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah, it was really good. Good enough that I platinumed it. Which, well, first off, I beat it, which doesn't always happen for games that I play.
That never happens. For
Yeah, it
games
never
you
happens.
play.
Yeah, yeah. So it did something right. So do you want to start off discussing this one, Patrick?
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of Dragon Quest stuff lately because we just posted our Dragon Quest episode, and then Cullen and GC came back and they did a bonus XP with me with the side content of Dragon Quest and some inside scoops about like homophobia and the lead composer who passed away and whatnot. So I just thought I'd be like, well, why don't we keep this trend of Dragon Quest going on? And like
the only game I know of.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like the only reason you and Casey weren't on there is because you guys aren't big Dragon Quest people like I am. So, but this is a game, like you said, that you played and you've like platinum, which is crazy to think about you spending
over
any
100
amount
hours
of time doing that, because literally like the game alone, if you do all three parts, is 80 hours. So
yeah, it's pretty big.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird thinking of you platinuming something.
Yeah, and I did because it was fun. I think we when we think of like a RPG series, we always talk about Dragon Quest pops up as like oh yeah, Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, blah blah blah. But I think when I really do think back about what does that series mean to me and why do I like it, I think it's because it always is grounded in like a video gaminess where it's not always like super duper realistic looking. Whereas Final Fantasy 16, for example, coming out soonish, looks great for what it is, but it looks like a movie quality visuals. It looks wonderful. And Dragon Quest looks like an anime. I mean, it's literally still designed by Akira Toriyama, like the Dragon Ball Z artist. Like he's making it. So
that's one thing we kind of talked about when we were doing that episode 2, where Dragon Quest just has this like bedtime storybook feel.
Yeah, there you go.
Like it's like that comfort food book, you know, or whatever that's like go to, and it has so much rich familiarity, which really just makes it for a better experience, you know.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think my extent of the games that I've beaten in Dragon Quest include 1 and 11. So like I skipped the other 10.
Oops.
Yeah, but like
Oops.
I've played 2, I've played 3, I've played actually I played a lot of 9 if you can actually beat 9. But yeah, that's kind of where it went.
You can be 9.
Yeah,
9,
there's
like
there's
it has
credits.
an end.
Yeah, it has an end.
Yeah, I mean, like it has a full story. The rest of the stuff is just like things to do with friends. I didn't even know you played 9. I was in college when we were friends when that came out.
I don't think we knew each other when it came out.
Absolutely. I was in RA in Hillenbrand, 100%.
I don't know. We'll have to check the dates on that.
You're lying. You're
Anyways, I didn't play.
liar.
I didn't play too much. Regardless,
No, tangent story, proving you wrong. We drove to see Inception from Purdue in the summer to Indianapolis in Fishers, and we saw Inception at the IMAX theater there. And in the back seat of your car, I played Dragon Quest IX the entire way down and the entire way up. Boom, memory.
did I even see Inception in theaters? I'm sure.
Yeah, we saw it. I think I saw it 3 times, and twice was with you.
Oh, that doesn't seem like something.
Once was in college, and one was was definitely in Indianapolis. Anyways,
well,
so
anyone watching and listening to this know
Jason's a bad friend.
We're immediately gonna reconcile. And
the one person I could have multiplayed Dragon Quest IX with.
Okay, and this is a Dragon Quest XI podcast.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so yeah, it is. It really just has that like wonderfulness in its characters, and like if you're a huge series person, it's comfort food. It has that identity that you can see stretching over across the entire series, and a lot of other series don't have that benefit. Like I look at Final Fantasy, and Final Fantasy has things that pop up, but there's no consistent. You know, like this is what Final Fantasy is, but like. Yeah. I think Pokemon might be the only thing that's close to it.
Yeah, where, it stays consistent across the decades.
Yeah, really. Which, I mean, very different. I think Dragon Quest succeeds where Pokemon, as we've said, like maybe
grows
got
a little
kind
stagnant,
of flat. the aesthetic is beautiful.
Yeah.
Like all the different realms that you see are really nice. Yeah, what else?
I think that for me, like you mentioned the familiarity, and I agree with that. I think looking back and knowing, like, of course the slime enemy will be there, but also like the gold golem, or like the warthogs, or like the mer people, whatever they were called,
orcs, or the
orcs.
yeah.
And so it was like neat. Like I, for me, uniquely had kind of basically gone from like an 8-bit sprite to this wonderful PlayStation 4 graphics, and like, but they're still there, so it looks really cool. But it just pulls you into the world, and it's always fun. Like when you go to what's the name of the seaside town that's like ransacked by I can't remember.
I know what you're talking about.
And like they
Gondolia.
I think I was gonna say Gondola. Yeah, it's that one. And so when you go there the first time, and it has like a charm to it, because it plays into like the funness of the water town seaside aspect, but it's not like ravaged by pirates and destruction and sad. Everyone's still like kind of happy, and like you can help out, and you can still, I don't know, cook things, like whatever you do there. And I always felt good. Like it made me want to keep going, want to keep seeing what was happening, and just experience the story and just see what the next town had to offer, which is great. And I love that.
One thing I learned when I was on the episode with the boys was that the writers really try to infuse a lot of like things that are going on in their lives into their stories. And like everywhere you go, there's a little vignette of like a story. It's like basically like an anime episode, you know, like there's something, there's the overall arc, but then there's like this little snippet that plays along with what's going on, but it also wraps up neatly. Or if it doesn't wrap up neatly, it'll wrap up neatly in part 2. Like you get to see the other half of the story, which I think is really great. Like when you go back to the desert city or Gondolia, or like any Emberdale or any of the other ones that you go to. I think Emberdale's in that one. I don't know. I played a lot of Dragon Quest lately, so all of the cities are blurring
together. See, it's all
the volcano city, exactly. Which there's always a volcano city. It is cool to see this, like, I want to see what's going on with this character now that things have changed.
It's changed,
like because as you know, a la Final Fantasy VI, you lose in part 1, and like that too, for a story that has so much whimsy, hits hard because it drastically changes the tone, where you have this like very lighthearted adventure, and then shit really hits the fan there. That like in that first third of the story, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Like, did that surprise you?
I was just gonna say it surprised me, and I think it's because the lightheartedness of it all made me think grand adventure with quotation marks around it, where it was like going to be safe. And I mean, nothing is like scary or frightening, but it just didn't. I guess I just didn't see it coming. And if I look back, I probably should have seen it coming based on all the rumors.
It's depressing. Like
it's sad.
It's okay. The world like got messed up. It got hit pretty bad. What can we do to salvage what we have? And not everyone makes it, which is also very sad.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of those loose ends that you see start up in the first part, that in part 2, that's when you kind of get to see the rest of it. Like things like Sylvando's dad, or Eric's sister you hear about in part 1, and you get some of Eric's story.
And you see her in part 2. Or was that part 3?
It's part 2 when you see Eric's sister.
Okay.
And she's like one of the main villains. Because of the greed and whatnot. Or the fact that, you know, you're on your quest to find everyone to make sure they're alive. And normally in games, you're like, oh yeah, here's this story we're going on, and, you know, like, I'm gonna collect everyone, and spoilers here, skip ahead if you don't want any spoilers. Like, one of your characters is just full on dead. Like, 100% dead, and it kind of sours the tone some too, but like in a good way, because you don't expect stuff like that to happen. You don't see permadeath very often.
It works well with the story. It wasn't cheaply done, and it felt like, okay, this is the shitty future we have right now, and like, I guess it's the present, and it's what you deal with. And so I thought it was good. I thought in contrast to what we just talked about, like the tone, the funness, and whatnot, it was a good juxtaposition of the two. It made a nice dichotomy. And yeah, it made me want to keep playing, which is impressive for, I think that happens after the 30-hour mark. It's a ways in the game.
Yeah, no, it's
probably even
I feel like the 30-hour mark is when you finish part 1.
Right.
So it's like much further than that, because that's probably pre canonical end game.
Yeah. Well,
right before there.
Let's talk about that too, because I know you wanted to talk about part 3. So like, what do you got on that one?
Yeah,
part 3 after the credits roll and the real game starts.
So more spoilers for people too. Like again, this is the spoiler heavy bonus XP. So I mean, we'll probably talk about the battle system at the end and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I learned from GC and Cullen, which I mean, I don't talk to too many people about Dragon Quest, and I didn't realize, and it makes sense, how polarizing part 3 is, because part 2 it's kind of like Final Fantasy VI, where you defeat Kefka, the end, the world goes on. But imagine if you could go back to before Kefka screwed everything up and stop it. Yeah, and change it. And a lot of people have issues with that, because a lot of the character growth happens in part 2.
Yeah, it's from the trauma they get their arc. Yeah.
Like Serena, her big growth is there. I think Rab develops a lot more as a character. Eric for sure. He gets the full completion. And then Hendrix, big arc too, of like, oh god, like the king is bad, I've been playing the bad part the entire time. So a lot of people were upset, because if you go back in time and stop the problem when like you can like defeat the guy that defeats you at the tree and whatnot,
right,
and then you defeat the king, it just removes those arcs completely, and it just like really, those characters never learn those lessons.
Yeah, I get it, and I never really thought about that, but I think that you're right, but it's a unique aspect for the medium that we're enjoying as the player. Like, we see the completion, so it works for us, but if you're thinking of just in the world, and I think Hero, he knows, so like he knows what happened.
Yeah, he's the only one who remembers.
Right, so like, he has it all in his mind. But
because it's even funny, like, everyone else goes back to the level that you were when you made it to that tree, except for the hero. And and like, it's a little bit of an oh fuck moment when you're trying to beat those bosses. You're just like,
level
like
10,
level 20, like level 26, and the hero's like level 50 something.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. Are you one of those people that has to have your heroes at the same level as they go up, or are you okay?
I mean, I actually don't mind if there's a little bit of a discrepancy. Like, I like using everyone, but it doesn't have to be perfect,
Got it. Okay, for me, 2 things. I'm always a sucker for time travel. So if there's time travel, I will like it. It's great. I love seeing it. And then the second part, I think that it's the way to go, because I know some people that I've talked to, mainly at work, had like finished the game after that part 2 ending in whatever that dome thing is that you would go to. The credits like roll, and they stopped. And I was like, man, you haven't even gotten there yet. But like, you do still get a complete story. I just think you can get a completer story if you do what I would consider the full game and the real ending, which is all of that. And it is a more like happy hunky-dory, and everything feels solid and great, and it wrapped up in a neat little bow. But I think that's what it should be. I think that's it worked.
To challenge a little bit, do you think that is just their way of saying, here's more game? Like, almost like,
I see.
We didn't want to sell this as DLC because we didn't want to come across as scummy, because Dragon Quest doesn't do DLC, but like this would have been the DLC.
The DLC.
Because to me, it almost feels
it
like
could be.
that.
It could be.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, if it was going to be DLC, I'm glad it wasn't, because I'd rather get the full game on the disc. So that's better. But no, I don't think it's DLC. I think if they did that and they ended the game and then said, actually, JK, here's the rest of the story, a la like Mass Effect Citadel expansion or whatever, it would feel not as good. Like, then I would feel a little bit more scummy and bad. So I think it's the right way to do it. Also, before we move on to like our next topic too, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is canonically the first game. Is that correct?
No, it is. Oh, you know what?
I think,
yeah,
I think because you go back, right?
Because this is the prequel to 3.
Right, which is the prequel to 1 and 2.
And 3 is the prequel to 1 and 2. So
Right.
yeah, technically I think it is. Which
Yeah,
is so,
it is.
Which also just so weird.
Which is really bizarre, but it's something that when I heard that, because I played it like a year after it came out, I was like even more intrigued, because I'm like, nice, now I have connections to this one, and there's like very subtle connections to the first one, that if you played it, you can kind of be like, oh cool, it's that sword again or something.
Well, but that's just the series.
That's the series as a whole, yeah.
Yeah, there are always the swords popping up from
Right.
other games, or the shields,
yeah.
and whatnot. I that's very like just RPG series.
In general, I liked it.
Yeah, I am split on it. I mean, I definitely like the last part. I do like, there's that extra tier of crafting and
Right.
bossing and whatnot that you don't get to see. I think Kalasmos is kind of like the epitome of a super like the boss,
boss,
he was
yeah.
a very tough...
He's the Ozma of that game.
Yeah, he really is. Dragon Quest 6 does something very similar in the sense of like there is a final boss, but there is like one more boss after that,
The challenge boss.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily feel like we're tacking on like this is just extra. Like it feels like, no, you want to go and do this,
Right.
like you want to go and find that boss and kill him, because there's more evil to be fought, as opposed to, you're saying like Ozma has in Final Fantasy 9 is very like, yeah, he's just there, like why are we fighting a planet, like this is stupid.
yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, speaking of fighting though, like I wanted to touch on that too. Like I really liked the combat in the game. I mean, if I had to pick like what I enjoy most for RPGs, I really do like turn-based combat. I think it's more fun in my opinion, as opposed to action or ATV style. So it has that, and I like.
Yeah, isn't it weird? Like, why is it that it holds up so well in this series? Because a lot of people say that turn-based gaming or like RPGs are dead. I disagree. I think it's not as niche as you'd think. I just don't think we're seeing as many, but like, why does it hold up so well in this game? What was it about the turn-based like that kept it, I don't want to say like fresh, but like good?
I wouldn't say it was fresh. I think it's just good. I think it's because it was thought out, and I know in previous recordings for podcasts we've talked about design aspects and things like that too, but in 11 it made sense that the developers did it this way, because you would get things like I think Jade or someone could put someone to sleep, and then Eric could like triple damage a sleeping target or something like that. It clearly made sense that they were like, here's the strategy you go with.
Yeah, Sylvando or what's her name, Veronica, could put someone into sleep.
Sure.
Or even the hero, I think he had sleep too.
Probably hero had like everything. Yeah, so there's that, but it also went to like I think it's called the pep up system or whatever. Like those also linked together. So you saw that you could do some crazy shenanigans, which I definitely did, where you would like showcase in the golden or the metal slime enemies, one hit KO them with like the triple XP boost. It's obvious that it was thought out. It wasn't just like, here is some things you can do, that's cool. The developers planned it out, and so they gave you that route for what you could do and how you could combat and fight things, and it just worked.
Nothing was unique, but like
but
you said, I think
bad.
It was, but it was well thought. Like little things like your weapons and your shields changed with your character, or they were like cool armor that you could change your characters and like change their outfits and whatnot. Even to the point where I never played my main hero in his original outfit because I don't like it, and would always have him dressed as the Dragon Quest 8 hero. Exactly. That outfit looked so much better. So I think that it's all those little details, like the characters are balanced well, where this character can set up this character. Everyone is useful. You can swap characters in, kind of like Final Fantasy X. Buffs and debuffs are useful. You can even do status effects on bosses. Like every little thing. And all the characters have personality too. Like the way they swing their weapons are different.
I mean, even their weapons, like Sylvando juggles. Like it's just like such unique things that are fun. And speaking of 10, I wouldn't call it a sphere grid, but it has a similar aspect to that where you level up, and like it felt significant. So thinking of Sylvando again, I think I'm gonna get this wrong, but he had two weapon types. I think it's a whip and something else.
He has three: whips, daggers, and swords.
Sure, there you go. And like once you get to that one of those sections, let's just say daggers in his skill tree, he's like a viable dagger user. Like it's not like here you go, everyone can do everything. No, like he could do it with Eric. Eric's probably better, but like you have options, and it felt fun. Like I could see why you would keep playing, keep trying, and that's exactly what I did.
I think, yeah, you're right. Like everyone had a role. Some people's roles were super dedicated and some were more filler. Like I think Rab and Sylvando were a little bit more along the lines of we can do a little bit of everything, so we're just a good placeholder fourth party member, which those were my two favorite characters from that game. But just everything just seemed to have a lot of thought to it, and I think that's something that you don't see in a lot of turn-based RPGs, where it's usually you have a main character who is the strongest and does the most damage, and then everyone else is kind of like okay, and then you get like one more edgelord super good. And like this didn't feel like that. Like I think your main character is probably somewhere in the middle in this game for at least damage output. Like Eric is your premier damage dealer overall, and with Jade like behind that, and then Veronica, when she gets her last spells, is blowing everything up. So it's interesting to see that kind of like this felt like a party. And I remember watching a really funny video when it came out from someone at what's one of the big review places, it's one of the ones that Kotaku. And he talked about how Dragon Quest XI was his favorite game, and it was like even the little things like, oh, we have like this bromance between Eric and the main character, and it's the main character's job to heal Eric while Eric attacks because Eric can't heal himself. And it was just like these like weird little things, but it's like, but you know, you're right, like these characters are kind of bromantic in that way, but even the way they play out in battle kind of emphasizes that even more. So
I mean the game had everything. So I think if I'm looking ahead at like Dragon Quest 12, which I feel like was announced like 50 million years ago.
Wait, and it wasn't even. It was just a year ago, right?
No,
it wasn't
50 million years ago. No, I'm excited. Like I want to see more, and I think at the time of this recording, we're close to FF16, and I'm intrigued. Like it looks cool, I guess. But like that's not the type of game I really enjoy. I look for like color, fun, and like humor in my like action, and I think that's what Dragon Quest brings. It's just that's the uniqueness it's stuck with, which is
the whimsy,
like the whimsy. Yeah, exactly. And that's what I like. I think that's why the series works.
I agree with you. Like I am a big Final Fantasy person, but I'm a little bit of a Final Fantasy snob, and like looking at it and seeing it, I'm going to get it and play it, but I'm not excited for it because again, like it is very much a what's it going to be this time,
right? And
I don't feel that way for Dragon Quest, because Dragon Quest has proven time and time again it's like it's Dragon Quest, you know, like you just know, like I'm gonna kind of like Legends of Zelda, like even when Breath of the Wild came in and like pivoted, it was still Zelda. Like these games are still,
you knew what
Legends
you're getting
of Zelda.
into.
You knew what you were getting into. It was very familiar territory. Like they pivoted some things, but you still knew it it felt good. It felt wholesome. So kudos to you, Dragon Quest XI, for being one of the best games ever made. Bold statement, but true. Yeah, we love you, Dragon Quest. We don't love your homophobic original creation team, but
nowadays
we love you as a game.
we good.
Yeah.